heard pay up or die, and they look you in the eye, knowing you believe the lie that inclusion was everybody's friend, when the truth now we all know that was the beginning of the end. You didn't fight back, you failed to resist, and now the country is under their fist. No sun, no fun, no sky. All the music now must die.
Well, good morning. How the devil are you? It's been an interesting few days. I went down to the protest, and I can tell you it was angry. It wasn't led by Farage. It wasn't arranged by Tommy Robinson. It was arranged by Turning Point, and also the local Southampton patriots, who are really lovely, concerned parents who've been worried about the migrant hotels right next to the student accommodation in Southampton. And they're the ones that have been raising these issues, and you can imagine what they've been called. It was largely peaceful from what I saw, and then it began to sort of kick off. And that's when myself and the people that had organised it, that I was with, decided to, be somewhere sensible, which wasn't anywhere near the violence. But, these things are going to happen. These things are bound to happen. If you ignore the people and they vote, and then you ignore their votes, and then when they vote on something like monumental, like Brexit, you tell them that they're all thick, stupid and racist, and they don't really know what they're voting for, and then you don't give them Brexit. And then you tell them in every single election, we're going to stop the boats, we're going to stop the migrants, and you just bring more and more in. And all the while, they're watching their wages fall, they're watching their high streets crumble, they're seeing unemployment rise amongst their children, safety disappearing for their children. I'm sorry, but they're going to be angry. And they should be angry. We should all be very angry. And like Farage, I just agree that you have to be angry, and but you have to channel it, and it has to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere that will make a difference. Just before I talk about Islam in our parliament, I wonder if I can show you a Kemi Badenoch tweet. Now, what we know from Henry Novak's family is that his sister, who they seem to adore each other, didn't they? Like a really nice brother and sister relationship, which many of us could learn from. But the sister has been sharing Robert Jenrick's posts, I think, on Twitter, and Kemi has met with the family. And I'm going to read you what they say, what she said, and I think we can all agree what the glaring admission is. Now, my view on Henry Novak's father and what he said outside that court after being racially abused by the murderer's family and accomplices, what he said was really measured about don't take it out on certain groups. And I think we could say from that he meant Sikhs. I think we could guess that he meant Sikhs. Like, this isn't a Sikh problem, and that will probably be because he's not encountered any Sikh violence. He doesn't think that there is a violence issue in the Sikh community, and so that's what he's saying. However, he does really condemn the police, and then for some reason, my computer doesn't really like X this morning. Let me just tell you what she said then. So I just shared it on Twitter, actually. Okay. Kemi says, today I've met Lucy, Mark and Katie, Henry Novak's mother, father and stepmother. Their courage is extraordinary. They've endured the most appalling loss. It is a life sentence for them. They've also faced the agonizing decision to release the harrowing body-worn camera footage, knowing how painful it would be and how strongly people would react. They did so because they want truth, accountability, and change. So let me just read that sentence again. They knew how strongly people would react. Now, that goes against the government's narrative, does it not? That the family don't want protests and don't want people to react. Because that's what it sounds like to me. Sounds like they do want people to react. They have asked that we work across political parties and religions to rebuild trust in the police. The trust that has been broken because of what happened, and I agree with them on that. Now, I think that the trust that will come back, if ever, with the police is if the police start genuinely behaving and treating people without fear or favour. That's the only way this will come back. Personally, I don't want religions anywhere near this. I don't want religions to touch it. I don't want Muslim community being represented. I don't want any of that. If any religion is represented with anything to do with the police, it's Christianity and none other. None other. And probably not even them either. We must also be prepared to carefully examine, and seriously, the religious practices or exemptions that permit the carrying of dangerous weapons in public. Right, so maybe that's why they've mentioned religions. Now they're talking about religion again. They're clearly talking about the kirpan and other activities that are not conducive to the public good. Religious practices or exemptions, and then there's an example, and other activities that are not conducive to the public good. Well, I wonder what that might be. I personally came across some Muslims on Sunday praying outside of Hyde Park. Why? Why are you in public praying? I'm going to share a video of that a bit later today when one of them spits at me and calls me a motherfuck. Henry's family do not want anger to tear communities apart. They didn't say they don't want anger. They said they don't want anger to tear communities apart. Just these are very careful words. I would imagine, I don't know anything about his family, but I would imagine that they're relatively an intelligent bunch, right? Common sense, intelligent bunch. They're a family who have friends across faith and race, and so did Henry. His family want his memory to help bring our society together. Now, I agree. He could be the man that changed the world. I did say that. It's that footage. Like, if there's any hope left in the world, that footage has to change the way we think about all of this stuff. I don't want to not look back in anger. I'm very angry. My bias is conscious, and I'm very angry. What the family agreed with me on is that we need to bring common sense back. And that's what we all should be fighting for. I promised the family that we will work to ensure there is a positive legacy for Henry out of this tragedy. That is my focus. And I agree. His small voice saying, "I can't breathe," on that footage and being treated like a criminal, that has to, if not now, then when? If not you, then who? It does have to be now. And it really does have to be you, and you can't wait. So I thought that was quite an important thing. Really goes against Henry's family have said they don't want further division. They haven't said that. I think they want, from what I read from that, there is no clear message of please don't protest. There is no clear message of please don't protest the police. None of that. There isn't. I think there is definitely the omission to say that the police have done a great job and they don't blame the police. They haven't said that. They said they do. We said they do. And if I can just briefly talk about my experience with the police over the years, is that, and I've said it many times, and I said it the other day, the police see women like me, so against your protected character, so your protected groups in the police are races as long as they're minority, so BAME, so Black and Asian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, brown people in general, not white people. So we're not like a special protected characteristic according to the police. Not women, certainly not young white men. You're the worst of it. Look at the police that come out when young white men get to go and try and say something in public. Look how seriously they take it. I think they know that if young white men, because I think they're young white men on the right, normal young white men, are what I would call men, right? Often, the thing with men is that violence is here. Like, it doesn't have to be a really kind of masculine man is not violent, but there is the threat that he might be. There's this, walk softly, carry a big stick. There's that. That's what I think masculinity is. It's the power to do ultimate violence, but not doing it, right? And actual men, they have that, don't they? And I've spent a lot of time recently around those sorts of men, and they are chivalrous. I've never been asked so many times if I'm all right. I mean, maybe that's because I'm 51 as well, so everyone thinks I'm decrepit, but I've never been asked so many times if I'm all right. Mind my step. I mean, a guy literally caught me from falling over. When the police started pushing and the crowd started pushing, the men directly next to me in that crowd, they stood like this so I didn't get crushed. Like, there is, so if you awaken those men and their anger, unlike the low IQ, put your weapons back in the mosque mob that come out, those actual consistently quite violent, I don't mean all of them, I mean the ones that you saw with the masks on, ready to fight. If you just look at those examples, it's the men that constantly kind of indicate violence that are easier for the police to deal with. But it's the other ones. And maybe the police know that if those men are allowed to be active, get together, form something, then they are possibly the biggest threat to the stability of the elites in this country. Because others they can deal with. In fact, they don't. Like Hare Hills, when these are all rumors, so this is what I heard at the time. I cannot confirm or deny, but I think there was something like a baby had its arm broken, or there was some social services, like genuine social services issue, when the social workers came to take those children. I think they might have been Roma, or they might have been travelers, I'm not sure, but a very diverse group of people came out to fight the police, and the police retreated. There's many situations where the police retreat, and I think we know that that's not when they're dealing with young white men. They're not retreating then. They'll go on and on and on. So it is different. And look, in that crowd, they're not just white people, but I think even if you're a black person at the United Kingdom, or a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh, Iranian, whatever you are, if you're in a group with also like predominantly young white men, then I'm sorry, you're just considered to be a young white man, therefore like racist, trouble, violent, hooligan, whatever you want to call them, that's how you're considered as well. So welcome aboard. But anyway, when the police come, and you've got the protected characteristic or the vulnerable group of men in dresses pissing in bottles, when you've got those people, the police come, and it is considered that no matter how they behave, they are justified. And no matter how you behave, you're not going to be a victim. No matter what happens to you, you're not going to be a victim. When I was in a room full of women and I was saying something that goes against kind of the mainstream narrative, and I was asking women about what's going on, like, are they allowing men in their spaces, then I'm seen as the aggressor, even though I've said nothing. You know, that's where we are. Two-tier policing absolutely exists. We've seen it time and time again. I have seen a small little ex-Muslim woman be arrested at Speaker's Corner because men were harassing her. Like, we're going to test this not two-tier policing when we go to Whitechapel on the 27th of June. If you sign up to the website, then you get full details about exactly what's going on. But anyway, looking at two-tier, and the main topic why I wanted to talk today is specifically looking at this gentleman and what he said in the rape gang inquiry in Parliament. And I think what this is about is collecting the data of the perpetrators. And we know why this has to go to petition. Why do we collect, like, two-tier policing, two-tier justice? Why do you collect the data of victims but not perpetrators? Because let's say, and this probably isn't true, but let's say that nobody was racist at all, but the only black women that were getting killed were being killed by white men or Muslim men, but by black men. Let's say that was the case. And then they record that there's a disproportionate number of black women being killed. How do you know why? Because I'm sure it would be said, oh, you know, more black women. Like, I just heard this thing, more black women die in childbirth. Well, 15 to 20% of doctors in the NHS at the moment are Muslim. Doctors, nurses, etc. are Muslim. How do we know it's racism? Or how can we call it racism if, let's say, all the nurses were black? But it's just so ridiculous that you wouldn't record the ethnicity. And just on that for one moment, before I talk about Ayoub Khan. My area where I live, the policing area of Wiltshire, is 94.6% white. 94.6% white. And that statistic will be that low, 94.6%, as opposed to higher, probably predominantly because of the amount of Muslims that live in Swindon. That's kind of my nearest big place. And yet, our police force train officers about Black history and Black culture so they can be better when they, I don't know, encounter gangs. It was one of the things it said. And less than 2% of the population of Wiltshire is Black. There's probably more Chinese. There's no training about Chinese culture. You know, there's no training about Chinese culture. Nothing whatsoever for a more represented minority in my area than Black. Like, when are we going to start having proper conversations about this? My computer is on go slow, so my apologies.
Begin where every debate on this subject must begin, with the victims and survivors of child sexual abuse, like some of the brave women that are here sat in this hall. There are few crimes more devastating, and there are few duties more important for this House than ensuring that every perpetrator is identified, convicted, and punished with the full force of the law. So let me be clear at the outset. I support the proper collection and publication of data that helps us understand patterns of offending, close gaps in safeguarding, improve prosecution, and protect children. As a barrister, I believe in evidence. I believe in facts. I believe that the criminal justice system must follow the evidence, wherever it leads, regardless of whether those facts are convenient or uncomfortable. But I also believe we must be honest about what some people are doing with this issue. Because there is...
So now, what I want to say about this is, why is it relevant? If you want the facts, and the facts can only be gathered by collecting data, what difference does it make why some people are asking? And if that's important to you, why haven't you already asked for that? Like if let's face it, if he was sure that the data around grooming gangs was inaccurate, he would want the data. He would want the data. If all the things we said about Pakistani Muslims being overrepresented, he would be talking about data.
There's a difference between using data to protect children and using children as a shield for prejudice. There is a difference between seeking transparency and seeking a radicalized political weapon.
This is something that's been happening over the last few days. They would rather talk about some distraction. So he doesn't want to talk about the fact that it's mostly Pakistani Muslim men. He wants to talk about how racist it is for people to want to know and prove that it is Pakistani Muslim men. That's happening with, oh, Henry Novak's family, they don't want this. Which, number one, doesn't seem to be true. And my gut feeling is they do want this. My gut feeling as a mother is, if you done that to my son, I would want the country to set the place alight. I would want every single person to know my son's name. I would want to know about the injustice of how he was treated as he was dying. I don't, I'm not advocating that anybody would do anything violent, but I want firm, consistent pressure until those police and every single police force commit to genuine policing without prejudice.
And I'm afraid that around this petition, around this wider debate, there are some voices who appear far less interested in victims than they are in validating their own hatred of ethnic minorities.
I'm going to guess, because I only saw a little bit of this because I wanted to respond to it properly, but I'm going to guess he doesn't list any single kind of bit of even remotely tangible evidence for his claims.
Muslims, migrants, and foreign nationals
who do commit a disproportionate amount of rape. And nobody would be able to, if I was a racist and I wanted to prove, I decided that, to use Chinese as an example, I decided that Chinese people were doing something terrible, I would only be able to use that if it was true. I would only be able to express my racism, right, through something if it was true. So if I wanted to prove that it's disgusting to eat noodles, and if you mostly eat noodles, and look who eats the noodles, I would only be able to do that if it's true. So he knows. He damn well knows. I think he's the guy that's tried to make us fucking fund an airport in Pakistan. But this particular gentleman, who I think should piss off back to a country that he seems to feel far more loyalty to be quite frank. I don't know if he was born here or not, but I bet he's got a dual passport. I'm happy for him to leave. He clearly doesn't like us. But for him to say this, I think he knows what we're going to find with the data that will be collected.
That is not safeguarding. That is not justice. That is exploitation of another kind. We have to be incredibly careful here, because the facts simply do not support the narrative that some would like to peddle.
Well, they do, don't they, Dickie? Otherwise, you wouldn't mind. You'd be like, yeah, come on, bring it on. Let's have all the data. And then all you hateful people who hate Muslims and hate migrants and hate brown people and hate fish and chips, whatever it is you hate, you're all going to be wrong. So I would like more data, more data, more data, more data.
The data currently collected by the police is undoubtedly incomplete, and I welcome serious efforts to rectify that. But it's simply not true to suggest that we are operating in a complete evidential vacuum. The Ministry of Justice already records ethnicity and nationality data for those convicted and held within the prison estate. And while more up-to-date figures would of course be welcome, the available data show that as of 2020, more than 88% of prisoners serving sentences for sexual offences with an associated child sexual abuse offence were white. Fewer than 6% were Asian, and fewer than 0.5% had no stated ethnicity.
Hang on. Asian. Yeah, but what? Right. So if you say Asian, then I suspect that does look low. If you say Pakistani, I bet it's different. If you say Muslim, I suspect it's different. If you group Pakistanis in with all other Asians, Chinese coming up again, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, etc., then it is going to look it is going to look different. But we know that Pakistani Muslim paedophile rapists are overrepresented when it comes to family gang rape of children.
That is a relatively complete data set. And on those figures, white men are significantly represented. Yet no serious person in this House would argue that white people are inherently more likely to commit child sexual abuse because of their ethnicity, culture, or background. And rightly so, because it would be obscene policy and an obscene politics to draw sweeping conclusions about communities.
Yeah, but the thing is, we've met these men. We know these men, we've seen these men, and we know. We all know that Pakistani Muslim paedophile rapists are overrepresented. And you're using the word Asian to try and hide that fact.
Of millions from the crimes around 16,000 of the most depraved individuals in our society. So when people insist on doing exactly that to Pakistani, Muslim, Asian or migrant communities, they are not following the evidence. They are revealing a prejudice. They are not interested in protecting children. They're interested in blaming communities. That does not mean we ignore cases involving Asian men, Muslims, foreign nationals, or anyone else. It means the opposite. It means we investigate all of it. It means we prosecute all of it. It means we do not allow any community to hide behind discomfort, political embarrassment, or fear of reputational damage. But it also means we reject the grotesque idea that rape, abuse, or groomings are the product of select or even inferior ethnicities, religions, or nationalities. These are crimes committed by human beings. They are
men, actually. These are crimes committed by men.
Rooted in power, misogyny, coercion, and the exploitation of vulnerability. They are not committed by just Muslims, migrants, and minorities. Far from it. And if we are going to talk about consistency, well, let's talk about consistency. When John Ashby raped a Sikh woman in Warsaw, he did so while directing Islamophobic abuse at her because he believed she was Muslim. That was not incidental. It was part of the terror inflicted on the.
I can't believe he would be in a room with people, victims of grooming gangs, who were called white whores and subjected to so much racial abuse and abuse for not being Muslim. And he has the audacity to bring up that one incident. What an absolute wanker.
Victim. Yet many of the very people who are usually desperate to talk about ethnicity and religion suddenly changed their view. They said rape is rape.
No, I don't even know who he's talking about here. I didn't hear anybody say that. Nobody says that.
They criticize media outlets for making it about religion. Suddenly the victim's identity and the hate-driven nature of the attack was cleansed and downplayed. But when the perpetrator is Asian, Muslim or foreign, those same people insist that identity is everything. That is not a concern for victims. That is selective outrage.
He's so full of shit, isn't he? I think, look, my point about Islam is actually when you are loyal to an ideology, a belief system that basically doesn't want to fit in, wants to monopolize, colonize, and invade. When you belong to an ideology like that, I don't know if you can come to work and leave your ideology at the door, because all Muslims will tell you that their faith is the number one thing for them. Faith first, everything else second. Everything else second. So you have to get Islam out. I mean, maybe those two simpering white women behind him will say things like this as well, because they are dick pandering morons. But this is, well, I hope that's Samantha Nibbler, otherwise I've just been really mean. But this is very typical whataboutery nonsense, in which he's trying to say the people that want to find out this more information are racists.
Victim is from a minority community, they tell us not to mention her race or religion. When the perpetrator is from a minority community, they tell us his race or religion explains the crime.
That is bullshit. I've never heard anyone say that. I've never ever heard anyone say that, and I've never heard him talk about the fact that the Pakistani grooming gang victims were white girls. I might be mistaken. He might have said something somewhere.
That's double standard should shame anyone who claims to care about justice. And I say this plainly. Celebrating or minimizing the rape of women because she's Sikh or because she's presumed to be a Muslim is vile. Denying religiously or racially aggravated nature of such a crime is vile. It is not British, it is not patriotic, and it's not about protecting women and girls. I support better data collection. But unlike some, I do so because I'm consistent and because facts matter. I support it because bad data creates a vacuum, and that vacuum is either filled by denial or by hatred, and we should not tolerate either. The government must ensure that ethnicity and nationality data is collected accurately, consistently, and nationally. It must ensure that safeguarding agencies share intelligence properly. It must ensure that victims and survivors are believed, supported, and protected. It must ensure that local authorities, police forces, schools, health services, and prosecutors cannot fail children because they are afraid of asking difficult questions. The victims of child sexual abuse deserve better than to be turned into ammunition in a culture war. They deserve justice, and above all, they deserve honesty.
They were the victims of a culture war, you twat. They were the victims of a white girls don't matter war. They were the victims of an actual culture war where their rapes were overlooked because it was done by men, and people thought if they say anything, they're going to be accused of being racist.
They deserve a system that is brave enough to collect the facts and decent enough not to twist those facts into bigotry. So let us have transparency, let us collect the data, and let us publish what can properly and safely be published. But we must do it for the right reason, to support survivors and to bring offenders to justice, not to feed hatred or attribute these crimes to certain communities.
Well, the hatred's already done because they gang raped like nearly 1 million girls.
This is a problem that everyone in our society shares and a problem that we all bear. It belongs to all of us to prevent it, and it belongs to members to confront it with facts, consistency and compassion. Thank you, Chair.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whilst today's debate is very welcome, it's on the broad range of sexual offences against children and the gathering of data of the perpetrators. I would suggest, and certainly my constituents in Clacton would suggest, that there is something uniquely evil and awful about mass rape gangs. That's not to diminish in any way sexual abuse that may happen in the home by trusted people or elsewhere, but something uniquely evil about what is going on. And I can certainly talk for many of my constituents in saying that there is a feeling that because of racial sensitivities, the authorities at all levels for a couple of decades now have not done the job of genuinely pursuing justice.
Well, thank goodness for Nigel Farage, who continues. So you can look that up. It's on YouTube. Just type in Ayoub Khan, grooming gang, and you'll find him. But I just think it's important to get this, to keep talking about this crap. And these men, so I'm just finding, I just saw, what did I see? Thank you to Cherry Hudson for your £10 super chat. It's very kind of you. I'm just scrolling because I missed them while I was talking. I think that's it. Good. We just got to keep pushing this now. Henry Novak is obviously one of the most egregious, despicable examples of police prejudice against us. But it won't be the only one. It certainly isn't with us. I mean, I've been interviewed by the police on 3 occasions. I've been arrested once. I've had the police at my door. In addition to that, I've been ignored by the police when I try to complain about stalking. I've got 4 separate complaints with different police forces. You know, these are serious things. And for the government to sort of say there is no 2-tier is utterly insane and obnoxious and terrible. So anyway, look, if you can keep speaking up and be in places that even some people on your own side might be a little bit sketchy about, then I promise we will win. If you can find local groups, start doing your own local thing. I've recently done something fantastic, which is I've objected to the town. I live in the county town, and they wanted to fly the pride flag for 1 month every year for the next 5 years. They haven't put it up. It was supposed to start at the beginning of July this year. So they've only applied now for 4 years because 1 year's already gone, and the flag is not up. And that's because I just went online and 160 different people have objected to the flag being flown above my county hall. So that's something that you can do. I think small local actions are the way to go. And it's going to have to be you. It's going to have to be you. And look, when it comes to political parties, join whoever you bloody well like. Like, I know there's a big kind of competition that without reform, there would be no restore. Nigel Farage is the one who invented the whole thing. And I think he's had to go quite middle ground so he can get elected. And I damn well hope that the restore being in that Makerfield by-election doesn't split the vote and Andy Burnham get elected, because that would be absolutely terrible. Anyway, yeah, if you can do small things, go to your council meetings, have a look and see what they're discussing, find out about your HMOs, find out about how much money the council gives to migrants, find out about some of the, like in my council, for example, we all have certain rules except for traveller communities who have different rules about where they can set up, where they can bloody camp, all these things. We have 2-tier running through everything. There are certain communities where I live that get away with murder because no one wants to deal with them. Yeah, start with a t-shirt, says Helen. Get yourself a nice t-shirt. Oh, Diane, thank you. She's objected to the pride flag. Fantastic. I'm going to leave you with a little film I made, a little animation about let me just I think I've just blocked that person. I'm going to talk about the mental situation of anti-Semitism next time. I've got a couple of videos I'm going to put out. So yeah, look, in the meantime, think about the small things you can do. Start meeting people in pubs. Start working out, what are you going to do to save your town? Like, you're going to save your town. Other people are going to save their towns. You're the only one that can save your town. How are you going to do it? It's going to be embarrassing and difficult first to try and recruit people so that you can actually start doing things. Like, you know, are your town centres safe when girls are walking home at night? I mean, we've got barbers with like loads of men working in them. They don't cut any hair. They just hang around the town centre. Who's going to make sure the children are safe when they walk home, that they're not being chatted up by like 25-year-old Kurds or Turkish men? Like, that's what we're going to have to do. Okay. If you do all those things, I promise we will win. And you know why else we're going to win? Well, because I never lose.
My name is Ayoub Khan. I am a tiny man. Sharp suit, cheap grin, wave my hand. Say I love London, that's the plan. I smile wide, I shake your hand. Sell you lies, you understand. My name is Ayoub Khan.